Vin.
I'm Sori.
That's Booby.
And Julpy and solo cup full of water.
King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Who is this for?
This is for the... Wow, my eyesight is like horrible today. It's for Gabe.
Shout out to the big homie Gabe.
He's been waiting a while for this one.
Is that the partner tier guy?
Well, yeah, he is on a partner tier. But Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
This is the one where he was a little bit worried about what we're going to think about it. We don't let long songs come through, but unless we like make an exception for a particular reason, and an exception was made for Gabe. But after we figured this all out, he was like, oh no, and he's like worried that we're not going to like it because he's like, now if it's going to be like a really long one and you hate it, it's going to be worse than ever. But we shall see.
There are multiple ways to get your song reviewed there, listener. There's the standard option, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, vinandsori@gmail.com. And then there's also my favorite one, which is the community option. That's what I call it. It's $1 at the gate at Patreon.
It's Corona free, actually, because it's all online.
It's all online. It's it's Corona free. It's all online. You won't have to touch another human being, which is always a good thing in my book. It's the alliances are genre specific. So you log in, somebody will pick you up, you'll get an alliance. It's kind of cloak and dagger. They'll reach out to you, they'll recruit you, they'll pull you into their underground bunker and all that jazz. So that's one. The other is the $125 partner tier, where you can skip right to the head of the line. It's like the Disney Fast Pass thingamajiggy. If you did 3 of them at any point, if you did any of the $75 thingamajiggies 3 times, then you get grandfathered in automatically and you stay at the $75 rate.
If you already jumped off that rate, that tier is no longer available, but you can go through Vin and Sori merch at gmail.com, and then you just, in the little message, you just tell us, on PayPal, tell us what you want to.
So if you're one of those folks, you're grandfathered in at $75. Okay. King Gizzard and the Lizard. What is this? A murder of the universe? For timely topical political commentary, you can hit us up at Middle America with Vin and Sori. Okay.
Ready?
Murder of the universe. Let's go.
Go. Hmm. Ugh. 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 Oh no. Hmm. Oh. Oh. Oh, this literally makes me feel sick. Ew. Ugh. Ugh. Oh my gosh. That was the fastest 13 minutes ever, but it, obviously the most disgusting.
Nonillion is actually a number. It's
I feel so sick.
1 followed by 30 zeros is nonillion.
That was so gross. Did you visualize a lot of that?
I mean, how could you not? God almighty.
Oh, I feel sick.
So the murder of the universe is, what's this guy?
So he was basically a robot that got created, but he wanted to
It's a
feel
cyborg.
death. And isn't a cyborg a robot?
Yeah, it's like a humanoidish type.
But he wasn't
robot
human
that
enough.
You could mistake as a human being.
Yeah. But he wanted to experience death and sickness.
Right.
And so he created something that was all sickness, which hated him. And so then he made himself one with it, and then it just took over him until he was just this vomiting thing that took over the entire universe.
Yeah. That's, I mean, I read, I've talked about this book before. This book called The Giver, where they found a way to extract all pain and discomfort from life, and there was this one person who felt all of it, and that person was called the Giver. But the point of the book was
the movie.
The point of the book was that the negative aspects of life are worth it for the entire human experience. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the song, this is like a series of songs. This is like 4 or 5. These are like the last. Let's see. It started. Welcome to an Altered Future. It started at song 16 and it went down to song 21 basically. But there was like some spoken words in between. Mm-hmm. In between that. But what were you gonna say?
When he was talking about like wanting to feel death, mm-hmm. and his explanation of that, I felt like that it was, it did have like a sort of lore to it, I guess, when he was talking about an honorable death or a noble death. And then when he was saying a lonely death to me sounds awful. But at the same time, like, to be able to die is an interesting, like to think for a second, if you were in a place where you could never die, but it was not good and you couldn't feel, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it does seem
I'd like to die a noble death, or a coward's death, a hero's death, or a lonely death, to die in the arms of a lover or the arms of an alien. I desire my cash to experience and pulsate through my quasi-synapses and then be gone, expired, perish, fallen,
dead forevermore. Like, the way that he went through those, it had like a romantic feel to it. Like, yeah, like, it is, to be able to die, I don't know. It's weird because obviously we're Christians, so I believe that we're going to be in an existence where we will never die. But for now we have death, and there is a...
Well, I forgot who actually posed the argument. I mean, it gets repeated a lot, but basically the argument is that one perspective is just absolute nihilism where you say, look, everybody's going to go back to nothingness anyway. We came from nothingness, and that's where we're going back. And so life is meaningless. That's kind of like the typical sort of setup. But the response to that is to say, the fact that we came from nothingness and that we exist now means that we're eminently lucky as an accident of history. And the fact that we're going back to nothingness means that the little space, the little gap in between nothingnesses, I guess you'd say, is what makes life precious, because you're not going to have it forever. Yeah. Whereas if you were to live forever, then life becomes less and less precious, and then you know, the argument is that is the ultimate form of nihilism, is to say that, look, everything you do is empty anyway because it doesn't matter because everybody's going to live forever. It's kind of an obtuse way to get to make the argument, but I think at some level it's actually pretty significant. And you know, obviously I don't agree with it being a Christian, but I definitely see the point, and it looks like that's the argument this guy is making with himself, is he wants to experience all those negative things because it's one of those things where it's like, you know, it's an android, and so we kind of created this humanoid thing, but every time you see one of these stories, the android is always caught between being a machine and being human. Yeah. And then the ticker always goes towards being, you know, wanting to be human and wanting to experience all the things that humans experience. And, you know, when we watched Deus Ex Machina, you know, where this android girl was basically caught up in in that lab, and the guy falls in love with the android. I mean, I don't want to give any spoilers, but so it's a really interesting thing where even when we imagine in a because, you know, when you're writing literature, you're writing a movie, like there's literally, it's a limitless universe. You can defy all scientific laws or whatever, but it doesn't seem that we've been able to come up even at the imaginative level with a cyborg that can replicate one-to-one what a human being is.
Well, yeah, I think it's that, but I think, you know how, like, in human beings there's this need or this desire to have what you don't have. People always want, like, you know, it's always, the grass is always greener on the other side. So I think when you create a cyborg, then you automatically say, okay, well, what can't they have? They can't have death, they can't have sickness, they can't have love. Well, then they always try to make it so that way they want those things. Right. So it might be, you know, like you said, that, you know, accusation is the first form of confession. It might be that that's what we desire. We desire things that we can't have, so then we put that onto the cyborg.
Yeah. and so, like, that line, you know, that series of lines down there was pretty cool when he was talking about wanting death. It was, like, extremely poetic.
It really was. That's what I'm saying. That's why I used the word romantic. It had, like, a... Yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, it is, but it was such a weird thought I was having, because I was like, for a second I'm like, we are lucky that we can die. Like, that is really cool that we can expire and we can come to the end of ourselves and we can put our bodies to rest. But then I was like, yeah, but I don't really believe that that's ultimately the most romantic thing, because I do believe that we're going to rise from that death and then we are going to live forever. So right. It was a little confusing thought in my mind. That thing keeps getting blurry. I wonder if I should clean the screen. Maybe one of the kids touched it or something.
Very possible. Yeah. It's an interesting. I mean, it doesn't look like it now, but
just in case there. Squeaky clean.
And then the end of it, like, what's interesting, he was saying he wanted to vomit. He also said he wanted to die. Yeah. And the whole record ends with him vomiting, and basically vomits and that's the end of the entire universe. So gross. Which is a very interesting. I would not have expected that to go in that direction.
Never seen a song like that. First of all, I hate throwing up. I'm sure everybody does, but you know, like, some people hate to sneeze. I don't hate to sneeze. I love to sneeze. I think it feels so good. Do you like sneezing?
I don't like any of those things.
Okay, I love to sneeze. I'm like, I feel better. But throwing up, you do feel better after you throw up a lot of times, but I hate, it's so horrible to me. So like that concept where it's just going on and on until the entire universe, a black hole, just like vomit coming, it was just too much. I was like,
well, it is kind of strange because, you know, when people go on these ayahuasca trips or whatever.
I know that.
That's actually a part of the ritual. I think they call it There's a specific word. It's not cleansing. Purging, I think is what it's called. And they
oh my
attach like a spiritual ramification to the very, you know, real biological, scientific, you know, what's going on when you introduce that type of thing into your system, and your system is like, whoa, hey.
Well, some of them were saying if you
fast,
like you're supposed to go on a certain fast for like a week before or something like that.
Yeah.
And then those people you're not always going to throw up if you do that.
Yeah, but it just seems to be, when I watch documentaries about this stuff, is particularly with ayahuasca, like it seems to be part of the ritual.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know, and it's very interesting because it's, you know, there's an obvious scientific explanation for that, which is you're introducing something that your body feels is a poison, so your body's fighting against it to expel it from your system.
Yeah.
But then there's all this spiritual import that's tacked onto it, which is very interesting because it's like one of those chicken or the egg arguments, like, did they just come up with that as a ritual to deal with the fact that that's constantly happening, you know, when you do that? Or is it sort of psychosomatic that, you know, because you put that type of import around it, that it actually ends up having a placebo effect where people really believe that? Because after people puke, or purge, then they have these experiences and everything gets fractal, and then they meet the blue lady and yada yada.
Oh, I mean, I would be terrified.
I mean, you know, it's a very, very strange thing. A bunch of people sitting around in a circle, you know, vomiting in these, you know, buckets or whatever, and then they go up into the universe and have these very esoteric experiences. So I mean, yeah, you can never tell. How do you know? Mm-hmm. Ugh, weird stuff, man. Weird stuff. This is very, very strange. This song fit the name of this band, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Like, this is exactly the type of song that I would have expected from this band.
From that band name.
Type of name. Mm. Good Lord.
Don't you think that was an interesting name for the cyborg?
Han-Tyumi?
Yeah, I mean, he sounded like Chinese or something. Like I never actually whenever I think of cyborgs, I never think of them being anything other than just white Americans. Isn't that weird?
That's pretty weird.
Because that's what you usually see.
It sounds Japanese. Yeah. That name.
Yeah.
Han-Tyumi.
Yeah.
But that's an anagram for humanity, I guess.
Really?
Yeah, it's an anagram. If you recycle the words, it would be humanity.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then, like, the song that we started on was like Digital Black or something like that. It was the name of the first song that we had, and it's about the whole world becoming digitized, which is the first time I was introduced to that was the Matrix idea. But of course, people believe, more and more people are starting to believe that we're in a simulation. So. Yep. We're already in a digitized world, according to those people. And I don't necessarily disagree with them. It's very fascinating for me to hear people say that we're in a... And these are like, you know, Elon Musk, and say what you want about him, but at minimum, he's definitely a respected thinker. Mm-hmm. And so for people to say... He basically said the odds are that we're most likely in a simulation. So we're already in that kind of universe, you know. It's a very, very interesting thing.
Yeah, but if you're in a simulation, then that means that nothing is actually real. So then how can you like or dislike something?
Well,
how can you be cold?
I don't know that... I don't know if I agree that if you're in a simulation that nothing is real. Because you're still having... It's like when people say, like, are you really meeting with entities when you get onto the DMT trips and all the rest of it? It's like, well... If you meet somebody in a simulation, like, for example, if you read a book, the relationship that you have with the characters at one level is not real, but the fact of the matter is, in real time, you are being affected by those characters in the real world.
Yeah.
So there is a sense in which those people are real and the experiences that you had are real. So I don't think that those concepts are mutually exclusive. Like we were in what do you call it, that virtual reality thing where we were like fighting against the zombies and all the rest of it. And like on the one hand, we knew that we were not in real life fighting zombies, but on the other hand, the experience that we had doing it was real because we experienced it.
No, I hear what you're saying, but what I'm saying is like, okay, if you're just in a simulation, then how could you get bad chicken? You know what I mean? Like you go to a restaurant and you have an expectation that that chicken's going to be amazing, then how could it not be amazing?
I mean, it's all part of the code.
So,
like, if you're in a simulation, you're not controlling the simulation. Whoever made the simulation is in control of the simulation, and they program what...
So they program bad chicken.
Yeah, they program how people are going to react. Of course, I don't understand how you can necessarily be an atheist and believe that the universe is a simulation, because that would require some mega high intelligence.
Mm-hmm. To orchestrate all of that.
To orchestrate all of it.
Just to orchestrate you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
and,
for real.
You know, like... I was watching, Chuck Missler was kind of like a, he was one of these Christians that would use, he had a massive science background. He worked in Department of Defense and all that. And he was talking about the world being a simulation 20, 30 years ago because of language like the heavens will roll up like a scroll and all the rest of it, and the dissolution of the universe, those passages that you find in the Bible. And he would relate it to quantum theory and, superstring theory and yada, 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 and physics and all that. And I was just like, he was basically saying, look, these are ancient Near Eastern people. They're not going to have language to talk about how this world is really it. And of course, the sort of motif in the Bible that what's seen is temporal and what's unseen is eternal, and the unseen world is the real world, and the seen world is some sort of temporary kind of placeholder. Type of thing. And so like he was saying, look, these are ancient Near Eastern people. There's no way that they don't have the categories to talk about how we would in the modern world, which says that the whole world is simulation and superstring theory and blah blah blah. As far as like words or voices or vibrations being the base level of the creative force of the world. So I was a big fan of Chuck Missler back in the day. He was a really, really interesting cat.
How'd you find him?
I mean, you know me. It was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning 20 years ago looking at stuff, and boom, there he was. I was like, oh, let me check this out.
Yeah, but 20 years ago, you had internet?
Yep. I had internet 20 years ago. I mean, that was,
we were so behind the times in my family. That was the
year 2000, right? Like, so there is internet in the year 2000, but...
Yeah, we didn't have internet.
So Missler
what was that
a really
like when you you must have been, well, it was slow though. You must have been crazy about that.
Crazy
internet.
About what?
Having access to all that information because of how much of a sponge you are.
Oh yeah, 100%. It was definitely a fun time. But yeah, listening,
For me, I just wanted to get into trouble.
Listening to Missler was fun. I'd sit there for hours and hours listening to that stuff. So
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I still think you could have actual legitimate experiences. I think you can fall in love. I think all that, you can do all that stuff in a holographic universe because, you're still having those experiences. Like, it's like...
So then you can't, it's not like, remember on The Matrix how it was basically like, when he thought he was gonna die in there, then you could die. But once he realized like he was greater than the system, then he like bows like down the walls bend and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but if we were in a simulation, you're saying that even if we are in a simulation, you couldn't actually do that because it's written in the code. Like you're not greater than the code.
Right.
So you are gonna die regardless.
Right.
Okay.
The Neo character was a messianic figure who is sort of like a Christ figure, and the Christ figure is always the person who's the exception to the rule. Or, he's called the anomaly, right? So Jesus, the rule is you die and then that's it. And Jesus is able to kind of crack the code and raise from the dead and beat that law because he's not beholden to it. So the messianic figure is never beholden to the law that the regular people are. So, yeah, so, it's really, really interesting stuff, the combination of sci-fi and all the rest of it. I don't really understand what the metaphor is as far as the puke being the thing that covers the whole world. Sometimes writers write stuff and you just write what you feel at the time, and there's stuff that I've written and then I look back like 10, 15 years later and I go, oh, okay, that's what was going on.
Well,
that's what was going on in my head at the time. I didn't know what was going on in my head at the time.
I got smarter than I thought. Sometimes, like, maybe I'm like a rarity, I don't know. But, like, when I get sick and I can't, like, stop throwing up, I think to myself, oh my gosh. Like, when I was pregnant with Orion and, like, there was times where I was so sick and I thought, oh, what if, like, I never stop being sick? What if I just keep throwing up? Like, what would happen? And so, like, maybe it came from a situation like that where they were like, what if I kept going? And then, like, in your mind, like, you create this entire thing and then you attach it to that story. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. What do you give the song? Songs up. This is probably the most unique set of lyrics I've read this year so far.
I do see why he said you have to kind of group them together.
Yeah.
You can't, like, if you just did the vomit coffin.
Yeah, and it gives you...
I'd be like, let me give this a 1.
It gives you context, and some of those were just, 1 minute spoken word.
Yeah, and that's what he was saying, so,
Like, my favorite part was the spoken word when he's talking about, like, dying and all that.
Me too. That was absolutely my favorite part.
That was the best part.
This one's a tough one.
This is an 8.4 for me.
It's a tough one for me because I can't tell you how, like, upset my stomach got, like, listening to this. Like, it was so
Yeah, I don't
gross.
feel very good. I'm supposed to go to the gym after this, and I'm not feeling it right now. Thank you very much.
I think I'm gonna probably go with, like, an 8.2. Yeah, 8.2. But that spoken word part I really liked. But, yeah. Gabe, it was disgusting.
Good job.
You're disgusting. No, just kidding.
We had a fireside one time about a simulation. We'll probably do it again.
Those are interesting.
Yeah. Fireside was fun. I had a fireside yesterday. There you go, ladies and gents. Vin out.
Sori out.
Gone.